We are counting down the 10 Soviet tractors that did not just compete with the West. They conquered conditions most Western machines could not survive. From Arctic-bound models built for ice roads to experimental giants and unstoppable farm icons, this ranking uncovers how rugged engineering, cold start genius, and simple repairability rewrote what performance meant behind the Iron Curtain. Which unstoppable powerhouse made it to number 1? Let us find out, starting with number 10. At number 10, the MTZ-55 stands out as a regional workhorse built for the realities of the Soviet North. Produced by the Lipetsk Tractor Zavod in the early 1980s, this 55-horsepower diesel machine was never meant for headlines or massive collective farms. Instead, it was engineered for the ice-laced fields and rough roads of places like Arkhangelsk and northern Kazakhstan, where winter temperatures could paralyze most Western tractors. The MTZ-55's design tackled these extremes head-on. A heated dual battery tray kept the starter alive in sub-zero dawns, while reinforced chassis mounts and studded tire gussets gave it the backbone and grip for frozen ground and icy slopes. Soviet export catalogs from 1980 to 1984 show steady shipments to remote outposts, where mechanics praised the MTZ-55's stubborn reliability. One Kazakh operator recalled swapping out a battery heater in a snowstorm with nothing but a wrench and a pair of gloves. While it never reached the global fame of the Belarus or Kirovets giants, the MTZ-55 quietly outlasted imported rivals like the Ford 4600, racking up more operating hours on Arctic ice roads than many Western machines dared. Its legacy lives on in the scattered villages and northern farms, where these tractors, battered but running, still pull their weight. Tucked into the daily life of Soviet villages, the T-25 earned its reputation as the go-to tractor for small farms and municipal crews. Produced from 1972 to 1995, this compact machine delivered just 25 horsepower from its air-cooled diesel engine, but its genius lay in simplicity. The T-25's 7-wire electrical system stripped away every unnecessary circuit, making electrical failures rare and troubleshooting fast. Mechanics could swap a clutch in under 30 minutes using basic hand tools. That feat kept fields moving during harvest and minimized downtime for street cleaning teams. Every major assembly, from the gearbox to the rear axle, was bolted on for easy removal, allowing even modestly skilled village mechanics to handle repairs without waiting for parts from distant cities. Municipal records from the 1980s show T-25s clearing snow, hauling feed, and towing water carts across hundreds of towns. While its low power kept it from the big fields, nothing matched the T-25 for keeping rural infrastructure running on a shoestring, year after year. In the late 1950s, deep inside the Kirov plant's design bureaus, Soviet engineers began sketching machines that looked more like battleships than farm equipment. These were the experimental giants, the forerunners of what would later become the legendary Kirovets family. Archival drawings from 1958 to 1960 reveal test beds fitted with a 300-horsepower V12 diesel, twin radiators running down a central tunnel, and a hydraulic hinge frame that could flex in the middle. Factory notebooks from this era show split-flow cooling systems under evaluation, a radical attempt to keep massive engines from overheating during endless summer plowing. Engineers experimented with modular gearboxes, swapping entire transmission assemblies in hours rather than days, aiming for field repairability on a scale no Western tractor could match at the time. These prototypes never saw mass production, but their DNA is unmistakable in the articulated K-700s that would later thunder across Soviet fields. As one museum curator put it, the K-9000 lineage was not about numbers. It was about proving what Soviet research and development could dream up when limits were off. While these machines exist today only in faded blueprints and a handful of museum parts, their influence shaped every heavy tractor that followed. On collective farms from Smolensk to the steppe, the MTZ-52 became a familiar sight, hauling trailers, plowing gardens, and even shuttling workers to the fields. Built by Minsk Tractor Works. Starting in the early 1960s, this 52-horsepower diesel machine was never about raw strength. Its real genius was modularity. The MTZ-52 shared about 70% of its mechanical parts with the larger Belarus family, including the same engine block found in the MTZ-80. That meant a water pump or gearbox from a neighbor's broken-down Belarus could be swapped straight onto an MTZ-52, keeping it running through planting and harvest when parts deliveries stalled for weeks. The tractor's 500-kilogram payload rack became a rolling Swiss Army knife, carrying hay bales, seed bags, fence posts, and even the occasional goat on its steel platform. Farmers rigged it with everything from potato planters to irrigation pumps, relying on a simple bolt pattern and a handful of wrenches. In the village repair sheds, mechanics praised the MTZ-52's parts charts, illustrated diagrams that made even novice hands confident enough to rebuild a clutch or swap a starter. While it never pulled the biggest plows, the MTZ-52 kept the work moving when versatility mattered more than muscle. Its legacy lives on in the fields and workshops where modular design meant survival, not just convenience. On the orchards and small holdings of Ukraine, the MTZ T-40 became a quiet legend for one reason above all. It could run on just about anything that burned. Introduced by the Kharkiv tractor plant in the late 1950s, the T-40's 38-horsepower diesel engine was engineered with a 0.25 millimeter injector gap, wider than most Western rivals, so it could swallow low-grade, water-laced, or even contaminated fuel without stalling. Soviet diesel quality was famously unpredictable, and where a John Deere or Ford would sputter to a halt, the T-40 kept chugging along, belching smoke, but finishing the job. The frame offered 45 centimeters of ground clearance, letting it straddle rows of apple and cherry trees without tearing up roots or low branches. In the KHTZ manuals, mechanics pointed to the injector nozzles and fuel lines. They were simple, overbuilt, and spaced for easy cleaning. Ukrainian orchard logs from the 1970s describe crews flushing out the fuel system with nothing but a rag and a screwdriver during the height of harvest. Western tractors, with tighter tolerances and cleaner burning engines, often needed filtered fuel and dealer servicing to recover from a bad tank. The T-40, by contrast, was designed for a world where purity was a luxury. Even today, restored T-40s are still working the same fields, prized by collectors for their stubbornness and by farmers for their ability to shrug off whatever fuel is available. It is not the strongest or fastest, but when the only diesel in town is half water and full of grit, nothing keeps running like a T-40. On the wide plains of Central Asia and the rocky slopes of the Caucasus, the KT's T-150K earned its reputation as the torque king of Soviet tractors. Introduced by the Kharkiv tractor plant in the early 1970s, this 150-horsepower machine packed a diesel engine capable of delivering a massive 950 Newton-meters of torque at just 1,400 revolutions per minute. Unlike Western tractors that favored high-revving engines, the T-150K was all about brute force at low speeds, a design choice that let it claw through deep mud, loose sand, and steep mountain fields without stalling. One Kyrgyz operator recalled using the T-150K to drag a harrow up a 12% grade, where imported Massey Ferguson spun out before reaching the summit. The secret lay in the planetary final drive, a rugged gear system that multiplied torque and distributed it evenly to all wheels. This setup not only boosted pulling strength, but also protected the drivetrain from sudden shocks, essential for rocky, unpredictable terrain. Field reports from KTZ archives describe the T-150K hauling loaded trailers as at high elevation, where thinner air sapped power from lesser engines. Mechanics praised its simple, overbuilt cooling system and the way it shrugged off hours of heavy labor without overheating. Even today, these machines are still found working in Central Asian valleys and Eastern European fields, their legacy cemented by a reputation for unstoppable power where it mattered most. The T-150K bridged the gap between nimble utility tractors and the articulated giants that would soon follow, proving that in the Soviet Union, raw torque was sometimes the only measure that counted. When the Kirovets K-700 rolled out of the St. Petersburg plant in 1976, it was clear Soviet engineers were not content to rest on past victories. The K-700 took the raw muscle of its predecessor and reworked it for reliability, starting with the axle housings. Factory bulletins from 1978 detailed a complete overhaul. Axle bearings were upgraded and were rated 30% stronger than the original K-700 specification. Mechanics in the field noticed the difference immediately. No more constant shimming or emergency bushings to keep the front end from grinding itself apart during spring tillage. A new V12 diesel option pushed output to 235 horsepower, giving collective farms the muscle to pull ever larger implements across the black earth without stalling or overheating. Service advisories from the late 1970s recommended retrofitting older K-700s with reinforced components, a move that kept entire fleets working through the punishing Russian season. One mechanic from Rostov-on-Don recalled swapping in a K-701 axle kit on a battered K-700 in a single afternoon, extending its life by years. The K-701's reputation spread quickly, not just for brute strength, but for solving the chronic failures that had dogged earlier models. While it never achieved the iconic status of the first K-700, the K-701 proved that Soviet engineering could learn, adapt, and deliver a machine that stood up to the relentless demands of the world's largest farms. In the 1970s, the MTZ Belarus 80 rolled off the Minsk Tractor Works assembly lines and onto the world stage, redefining what a general-purpose tractor could mean for both Soviet agriculture and global markets. With its 80-horsepower diesel engine and a 540 revolutions per minute, power takeoff, the Belarus 80 was engineered for more than just the sprawling fields of the USSR. It became the backbone of Soviet agricultural diplomacy, delivered by the trainload to countries from Ethiopia to Poland. Export ledgers from Minsk show over 500,000 units shipped abroad between 1973 and 1985, a feat unmatched by any Western rival of the era. The secret to its success was a blend of rugged standardization and practical design. Operators could count on the Belarus 80 to start in bitter cold, thanks to oversized batteries and robust preheater systems. Its simple universal parts network meant a replacement water pump or power takeoff shaft could be found in nearly any service depot, from Vladivostok to Addis Ababa. On Ethiopian state farms, these tractors broke new ground, literally, where Western models struggled with fuel quality and spare parts shortages. Soviet export invoices and power takeoff specification cards from the era list the same core features shipped worldwide, a sign of the confidence Minsk had in its design. Restoration clubs in Europe and Africa still prize the Belarus 80 for its reliability and ease of repair. Many are still in daily use, plowing fields or hauling loads decades after their first delivery. The Belarus 80's legacy is measured not just in numbers produced, but in the sheer range of climates, soils, and economies it helped transform. A true export juggernaut that set the standard for Soviet tractor endurance. On the snowy flats of Siberia and the muddy fields of the Volga, the DT-75 made its name as the unstoppable tracked tractor. First built in the late 1950s and rolling off assembly lines for decades, the DT-75 delivered 95 horsepower through a diesel engine that shrugged off sub-zero mornings and questionable fuel. Its secret was not just muscle, it was the wide steel tracks, spreading the tractor's weight to just 44 kilopascals of ground pressure. Where wheeled Western tractors bogged down or spun helplessly, the DT-75 crawled forward, pulling plows, harrows, or timber sleds across ground that would swallow a Massey Ferguson whole. In Tomsk, mechanics kept detailed logs through endless winters. One entry from January 1983 records a DT-75 starting at -35 without complaint, thanks to a robust preheater and oversized batteries. Operators ran a cold start demo for a visiting engineer. After a night in the open, the engine fired in under 2 minutes. The design left little to chance, with minimal wiring, thick steel everywhere, and a cooling system that could be stripped and reassembled in the field. Swapping out a water pump took just 18 minutes, a point of pride for Soviet repair crews who measured downtime in hours, not days. Farmers called it the ox for good reason. The DT-75's reputation spread beyond the Soviet Union, finding work in Bulgaria, Mongolia, and Ethiopia, where its ability to keep moving through mud and snow earned respect from mechanics and operators alike. Restoration forums today still trade stories of DT-75s running after 50 years, patched and welded, but unbowed. For sheer traction and winter reliability, no Western tractor of its era could match it. That is why the DT-75 claims the second spot, a tracked titan built for the world's worst conditions, and still proving it every season. The Kirovets K-700 didn't just break the mold for Soviet tractors. It redefined what heavy farm machinery could do on the open steppe. When the first K-700s rolled out of the Kirov plant in Leningrad in 1962, their sheer size and power set them apart from anything seen in collective agriculture. Powered by a 215 horsepower Vive 8 diesel, the K-700 delivered a drawbar pull of 96 kilonewtons, enough to rip through virgin earth or haul a 12-bottom plow across the black soil of Ukraine. Its articulated frame, hinged at the center, gave a turning radius under 9 meters, letting this 12-ton giant maneuver in tight fields where rigid Western tractors bogged down or jackknifed. The K-700's reputation was built in the field, not on the drawing board. Factory drawbar test sheets from the early 1970s documented pulling strength that left Western competitors struggling for traction. In Siberian logging camps, operators hooked chains from the K-700 to timber sleds loaded with pine trunks. One operator from the Tomsk region recalled towing a stuck ZIL truck and 3 loaded wagons in a single haul, the V8 roaring as the tractor crawled through knee-deep mud. While John Deere's 4020 series topped out at around 100 horsepower and relied on finesse, the K-700's brute force made it the undisputed king of the Soviet field. But muscle came with quirks. The K-700's front axle bearings became infamous among mechanics for wearing out under constant load, especially during spring tillage when the soil was heavy and wet. Kirov plant service bulletins from 1975 detailed a fix, shimming the bearings, and when possible, replacing them with oversized bushings cut from scrap bronze. Mechanics kept a stash of shims and bushings in their toolboxes, ready to patch up a K-700 in the middle of a field. This hands-on approach meant that even with known flaws, the K-700 could be kept running season after season, far from any factory service depot. The K-700's legacy stretches from the tundra to the deserts of Central Asia. Export records show these machines working in East Germany, Mongolia, and Cuba. Restoration clubs across Russia and Eastern Europe still prize the K-700 for its mechanical simplicity and raw power, with many original units still running after 50 years. For collectors, the K-700 is more than a machine. It is a symbol of Soviet ambition. Build it big, make it tough, and accept no substitute when the job demands real strength. In the world of heavy tractors, the K-700 didn't just outperform the West. It set a new standard for what it meant to conquer the land. Across all 10 machines, one pattern stands out. Soviet tractors prioritized survival over sophistication. In the harshest climates and toughest fields, brute simplicity outlasted comfort or cutting-edge tech. That philosophy means these workhorses still run decades later, outliving trends and borders. In a world chasing progress, their legacy reminds us, sometimes resilience outperforms refinement. Which legendary tractor would you trust in the wild? Let us know in the comments below.